Back in the day, the Dungeons and Dragons Saturday morning cartoon was one of my favorites. And I would dare say it's my favorite, second only to Thundar the Barbarian, both of which I own on DVD. When I heard Hasbro was doing a line dedicated to the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, I was ecstatic. My hopes were really high, and then they said they wanted to do it in 1/12 scale. Well, okay. Not happy about that, but I'll take it anyway. Then the reviews started pouring in, and oh boy. You know it's bad when people who are labeled shills are saying this is terrible. Yeah. And I held off on them for a long time. I did notice they looked like they were cheaply made. And then Ollie's to the rescue. Ollie's had them up for $10. I thought that was a good deal. I thought. So I got the three mains. Hank, Diana, Bobby. I have to say, I'm still a little disappointed. For one thing, nobody ever mentioned before, they aren't 1/12 scale. You stand them beside a 1/12 scale figures, and they're much shorter. Now, some are going to say, "Oh, well, it's because they're kids." Well, look at this footage from the cartoon. Here's Hank fighting with Wardu. And here's the kids with Strongheart. You can see Hank is just a little bit shorter than Strongheart. And the others are a little shorter than him. And for those of you who can't remember who those guys are, they're these guys. Remember NECA came out with them. Of course, they're from a 7-inch line, which explains why they're so much taller in that line than they are than Hank now. But the problem is, Hank is fairly tall and should be about as tall as Spider-Man and Storm Shadow, I would think. At least. So, yeah, this ain't a 1/12 line, people. So he shouldn't be this short. Even in Black Series shortness, this is too short. This is not a 6-inch scale line. This is at best a 5-inch scale line. And that is another disappointing thing, but also begs into the question of why the hell were these things $25? That shouldn't have been. Then, of course, we have to take a look at Hank first. Hank, man, take a look at this derpy expression on his face and then compare it to the card art, and you kind of get my point. The card art is the character we know from the cartoon. This is not, he doesn't have a dirt face like that. Oh, what are you going to do, right? So I did handle these with care. I noticed Hank's left arm was actually backwards. I had to turn it around so he could bend his arm properly. And I will say the bow he comes with is really freaking nice. I mean, looks exactly like it does in the cartoon. That much is really worth it. The energized bow, well, first off, paid attention to the cartoon when he pulled the bow, and it's even on the card art. Bow stayed the same, but there was an energy bolt in a pretend string that was energy. Worked, but no, we can't replicate that in a toy, because that would mean we care. A little frustrating to me. I mean, it seems like a small detail, but really, the devil is in the details. I think what's more insulting about the accessories, though, is that with Hank, they knew Hank's pose was bad, so they put it on the back of the card in a way no one would ever hold a bow. It's just wrong. God, this is so disappointing. This is horrible. Also, Hank comes with a D8. Honestly, if you could have left the dice out and saved us a buck or two, I'd have been happy. But why does he come with a D8? My suspicion is because they keep referring to him as Ranger. and Rangers hit dice are D8s. The more you know, kids. And as far as Hank's outfit goes, yeah, spot on, except for the derpy face. The hair's a little off, but that's okay. His knees are actually a different color than the rest of his tunic. Again, Hasbro, why? And I have to say, handling him, I feel like he's going to break. Now, we've seen instances of Hank breaking, so that doesn't help much. All in all, this is a tough one because even at $10, I feel like this is not right. This should have been a little bit better. And kind of got my hopes up when I bought these. I'm a little let down. Especially with Hank so far. You can't get Hank to get into a proper bow pulling position. You can't even get him on the position he's in on the box. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's why bother with this? Why? This is Hasbro at its worst. I have to admit, this is Hasbro at its worst. And it's a damn shame because Dungeons & Dragons is cool as hell and fun as hell and should have a lot more respect than this. Fans of the show probably know my disappointment already and have dealt with it, but it is even more disappointing than I ever thought after looking at this figure. Don't call it 1/12 scale if it's not 1/12 scale. That's the first thing. Don't do the different colored knees. I mean, how did that get past anybody? I mean, that should never happen. And it's so obvious on this one. I mean, usually it's like you barely notice it, and sometimes the camera can't even pick it up. This one is like, it sticks out. I showed it to my wife, and she's like, what the hell? So, yeah. That's my disappointing assessment of Hank. Stay tuned for Bobby and Diana. They'll be coming up soon.